It was supposed to be just another routine flight, cruising smoothly at 30,000 feet. Passengers settled into their seats, headphones on, some dozing, others scrolling through their phones. But then, something no one expected happened. The pilot slumped forward, unconscious. The hum of the engines suddenly felt ominous, and panic began to ripple through the cabin. People exchanged nervous glances, unsure if anyone could take control of the plane. In the middle of the chaos, two young twin girls in row 9 grabbed everyone's attention. With wide eyes and voices full of determination, they shouted, "We can fly!" Their words cut through the tension like a spark in the dark, leaving everyone frozen, half in disbelief, half in hope. Who were these girls, and how could they even say such a thing? As flight attendants scrambled and passengers clutched their armrests, the twins' bravery, or was it something else, offered a strange, almost magical twist to a terrifying situation. No one knew if their bold claim was just the imagination of children or if it held the key to surviving what could become the worst disaster in the skies. Every second felt heavier, each heartbeat echoing in the cabin. Eyes darted between the unconscious pilot and the fearless twins, caught between fear and fascination. The question hanging in the air was clear: could anyone or anything save the plane before it was too late? The passengers could hardly believe what they were seeing. Two small girls, barely 8 years old, were standing in the aisle, their tiny hands gripping the backs of seats for support. Their eyes weren't filled with fear like everyone else's, they were sharp, focused, almost as if they knew something no one else did. Whispers spread through the cabin. Who were these twins, and why did they act like they could take charge of a plane? The flight crew, though trained for emergencies, was frozen, unsure how to respond. The co-pilot's seat was empty. He had rushed to check on the pilot, who remained slumped over the controls. Flight attendants called for calm, but the tension in the air was thick, almost suffocating. Outside, the plane cut through clouds at cruising altitude, unaware of the drama unfolding inside. Some passengers tried to comfort the girls, but they shook their heads, insisting they had to help. Their mother, seated nearby, looked torn between panic and pride, whispering urgently to them to sit down. But the twins' energy was unshakable, and something in their gaze hinted at a deeper secret, something connected to the pilot, or maybe to the plane itself. Memories of previous flights, of sudden turbulence and small miracles, flashed through the minds of passengers, making the situation even more surreal. Phones were out, emergency calls attempted, but signals were weak at this altitude. Every second stretched longer, each heartbeat a drum of fear and anticipation. The cabin was a storm of whispers, shaking hands, and wide eyes. Some passengers were frozen with fear, others frantically scanning the emergency instructions, unsure if they could even make a difference. The twins remained in the aisle, their small voices rising above the chaos, repeating, "We can fly. We can help." No one knew whether to laugh, cry, or scream. Near the back of the plane, a man in a business suit clutched his briefcase, trying to call for help but finding the connection weak. His knuckles whitened as he looked toward the cockpit, where the pilot still lay unconscious. Flight attendants worked desperately to keep passengers calm, but the fear in the air was contagious. Every bump in the turbulence sent hearts racing faster. Meanwhile, the twins' mother tried to guide them to their seats, but the girls resisted. They whispered urgently to each other, as if following instructions only they could understand. A few curious passengers leaned in, listening to fragments of their words, sensing there was more behind the children's sudden confidence than mere imagination. Could they have been practicing this moment without anyone knowing? Or was there something stranger at work? From another angle, the co-pilot, now shaking from adrenaline, tried to rouse the pilot. Every second that ticked by increased the danger. The engine's hum felt louder, the plane's slight shudder more menacing. Passengers clutched armrests, some silently praying, others recording the moment on shaky phones, unsure if the twins' claim was bravery or delusion. Every eye in the cabin seemed drawn back to the twins. Hope and fear collided in the air, leaving everyone questioning what was possible. Could children really stand between life and disaster at 30,000 feet, or was the worst about to happen? The cabin was tense beyond words. Every passenger felt the weight of the altitude pressing on them, both physically and mentally. The unconscious pilot remained slumped over the controls, and the co-pilot's attempts to stabilize the plane were growing desperate. Sweat ran down his temple as he wrestled with the controls, but something was off. Too many alarms were blaring, and the plane wobbled with every passing second. The twins, still standing in row 9, seemed unaffected by the panic around them. Their eyes were locked on the cockpit, their hands trembling only slightly as they pointed toward the controls. Passengers couldn't help but watch in disbelief, some whispering to each other, questioning if the girls had some hidden knowledge or uncanny instinct. Their mother's face was pale, a mixture of fear and awe, as she held onto the seat back, silently urging them to be careful. From the aisles to the windows, tension crackled like electricity. A young flight attendant tried to calm passengers, but her voice shook as the plane hit a sudden turbulence, throwing some drinks and papers into the air. Phones fell to the floor, some recording the chaos, others forgotten entirely as fear gripped every heart. Outside, clouds rolled past like shadows, the horizon offering no comfort. Passengers' minds raced with worst-case scenarios. Would the plane hold together? Could anyone take control? The twins' proclamation, "We can fly," echoed in the ears of everyone, both a promise and a riddle. Each second stretched longer, each heartbeat louder, as the plane teetered between order and disaster. And then, a sharp alarm rang through the cockpit, louder than before. The plane shuddered violently. Everyone's eyes instinctively darted to the twins. This was the moment that would change everything, the moment the impossible might begin. Just as passengers held their breath, convinced the worst was about to happen, a new alarm pierced the cabin, different this time, sharper, more urgent. The co-pilot's face went pale as he realized the plane's autopilot had disengaged entirely. Every hand on the yoke felt heavier, every second stretched impossibly long. The hum of the engines was no longer a comfort, it was a reminder that at 30,000 feet, even a small mistake could turn fatal. Then something impossible happened. The twins, who had been staring intently at the cockpit, suddenly pointed to the emergency exit hatch. "No, the other way," one shouted, and a ripple of confusion ran through the passengers. Flight attendants exchanged frantic glances, unsure whether the girls were playing or directing something critical. The mother's voice quivered as she tried to explain, but the twins ignored her, their focus unshakable. Meanwhile, a window near the front cracked slightly with the turbulence, letting in a cold rush of air that made the cabin even more chaotic. Passengers clutched each other, fear intensifying. The co-pilot fought to steady the plane, but the controls felt unpredictable, like the aircraft itself was resisting. And then, a strange realization spread through the cabin. The twins weren't just shouting encouragement, they seemed to be giving precise instructions, as if they had somehow memorized the plane's systems. Murmurs rose. Could two young girls really know more about flying than trained adults in this emergency? The tension ratcheted higher with each heartbeat, as the impossible question haunted everyone: were the twins a miracle, or was the plane about to test them and all the passengers in ways no one could survive? The cabin was electric with tension as the plane dipped sharply, throwing passengers forward. The co-pilot's hands were shaking, sweat dripping down his face, but he couldn't let panic take over. Then, the twins shouted again, this time with a clear, confident tone. "Push it up. Pull it back slowly." Their voices cut through the chaos, oddly precise. Something inside the co-pilot clicked. He followed their directions, almost instinctively, adjusting the yoke exactly as the girls said. For a tense few seconds, the plane seemed to hang between disaster and safety. Then, slowly, the nose leveled, the engines steadied, and the violent shaking subsided. Passengers gasped, some crying, some laughing in relief. The twins smiled faintly, triumphant but calm, as if nothing had happened. The co-pilot sank into his seat, realizing he had been guided through the worst emergency of his life by two 8-year-olds. Just as the cabin began to relax, a new beep echoed from the cockpit. Everyone froze again. The monitor lit up with a warning, a minor mechanical failure in the landing gear, something that had gone unnoticed until now. The plane was safe for the moment, but the landing would require expert handling. The twins glanced at each other knowingly, then turned to the passengers, their eyes sparkling with a mix of mischief and wisdom. "We can help with that too," they said. Passengers stared in stunned silence, realizing the plane's survival had rested on the courage and intelligence of two young girls. No one could explain how they knew so much, or why, but one thing was certain: this flight would never be forgotten. And just as the world thought the danger had passed, a soft rumble from the engines hinted that the sky still had one final test in store. The plane finally began its slow descent, the tension in the cabin easing with every passing moment. Passengers whispered to one another, still processing what had happened, while flight attendants checked on everyone, offering water and reassurances. The co-pilot, exhausted but grateful, glanced at the twins in row 9, shaking his head in disbelief. "I don't know how you did it," he muttered, but the girls just smiled, as if the ordeal had been no more than a game to them. Their mother hugged them tightly, tears streaming down her face, overwhelmed by relief and pride. Other passengers approached cautiously, thanking the twins and marveling at their courage. Phones were out, capturing the stunned faces, the relieved smiles, and the unusual bravery of the two girls who had saved the flight at 30,000 feet. Rumors and headlines would soon spread about the mysterious twins who had seemingly guided a plane through near disaster, but for those on board, the experience was more than a story. It was a lesson in courage, focus, and the unexpected ways people can rise to the occasion. As the plane touched down safely, applause erupted throughout the cabin. Relief mixed with amazement as everyone realized the danger had passed, but the memory of the twins' calm confidence lingered. Passengers left the aircraft changed, carrying with them a reminder that sometimes heroes come from the most unlikely places. And while the world might never fully understand how two young girls saved a plane, one thing was certain: at 30,000 feet, bravery and belief can make the impossible happen. Number 3.